This committee has absolutely nothing to do with anything other than the fact that we've uncovered an email from a deputy chief of staff that apparently ordered the lane closure on the George Washington Bridge. We have an obligation to get an answer as to why.
When you
Paul.
said, you seem to be saying, and let me just clear this up, the Republicans had access to those emails, but actually didn't bother to look at them?
No.
Was that the case?
There was a set of emails, no, not a set of emails, there was a set of documents that were received by the Transportation Committee under subpoena about a year ago at this point in time. There was only one person who ever signed in to look at those documents. That was before, I want to make it clear, it's before the Wildstein, Bridget Kelly emails. This was the information we received under subpoena with regard to the operations total increase and those issues with the Port Authority.
Did they have access to the Bridget Kelly emails before they hit the papers or not?
They had access, whatever date, I think one of the members mentioned that whatever date it was January, they had access. That was the day that we had finished doing all of our document review and made them open to the full committee.
Senator Weinberg, I wonder if you would elaborate a little bit. You said at the end there, you talked about the idea of, in response to this notion that this committee might wind up rather far afield looking into this, that, and the other thing, and you talked about the notion of if we had gotten some answers.
Those are your words, far afield and looking into this, that, and anything. I don't believe that's what I said. What I said was that we would go wherever the documents led us. I didn't say anything about going far afield.
And the Republican concern was that this would go far afield, and your response to that was
that the investigation will go wherever these documents lead us. I know I keep repeating this, but I appeared before 4 meetings of the Port Authority. I wrote a letter on September 19th to one of the commissioners on the Port Authority asking for answers here. I did not start out with any preconceived notions, nor did I ever think that I would be standing here 4.5, almost 5 months later. So we will go wherever those documents take us. Right now we are looking at the George Washington Bridge, the lane closures, which created havoc and safety issues for thousands of people that I represent, that all these people standing here represent, and that indeed the governor of the state of New Jersey represents. So we need to find out who, and most important, one of the things we don't know is why was this order issued. That's a very, very big unanswered question. It's been unanswered for 4.5 months, and hopefully this committee will get the answer. We don't know what it's going to be.
Michael?
Senator Weinberg? When's your next meeting? What's the next step? And no new subpoenas going out today, correct?
The only subpoenas that will go out today are the same ones that we issued a week and a half ago, just to put the name of the Joint Committee on it, same return date, same individuals, same topic, no changes, just in terms of a completeness measure so that there's never any doubt or any question about which committee somebody has to respond to. So all those subpoenas that have previously been issued will be reissued today. Nothing new is being issued today.
When's your next meeting and what's the next step?
Next meeting, we're going to wait and see what we get back in terms of our subpoenas. February 3rd is the date that individuals are supposed to respond. We have to wait and see what we get back. We have to make a decision as to what material we get and whether it's relevant, and then make a decision going forward from there. So I can't give you an exact date, but we'll start making decisions as soon as the documents start coming in.
Assemblyman, can you tell us, or Senator Weinberg, you'll go wherever the documents lead you, but can you, what in the George Washington Bridge documents would lead you hypothetically to Hoboken, or do you already see a connection between what happened at the bridge and what Mayor Zimmer is alleging?
I'm not going to make any guesses on what would lead us to Hoboken or any other town in the state of New Jersey. I'll repeat what my co-chair said and what I said. We are starting this inquiry looking at the lane closures and the George Washington Bridge. I don't know what those documents will show us. And as I said, I couldn't have guessed what the first round of documents showed us. If I tried, I could not have guessed that. So we found something. Now we need to know the answers why, and we need to look at the second round of documents, which are due February 3rd. I have no idea where they will lead in the state.
To both chairmen, there have been speculation, has been speculation about the possibility that the $1 billion development deal, Hudson Crossing or whatever it's called up there at the bridge, might somehow have a connection to all of this. Is there any inclination at this point to delve further into a document trail involving that development as you are proceeding with this?
I think we want to be very clear about this, Brian. What we're going to do is follow the trail where it has led us at this point in time. We have an email that is clearly in the middle of a conversation about closing lanes. We need to know how that conversation started. We need to know who else was involved and what decision-making authority they had. We're going to follow that trail. There's a lot of discussion as to motive. Was it about political payback? Was it about a judicial appointment? Was it and the list keeps growing longer and longer. That is for the committee in terms of our legislative charge to fix this so it can't happen again. Ultimately, we need to know how it happened first. We're not there yet. We know one of the people involved, or two of the people perhaps. We need to understand exactly how it happened before we go anywhere else. And so we're going to take this one step at a time as we have in the past.
Assemblyman, we've done this twice now, the first time for this committee, but once before with the other, the Assemblies Committee. At both instances, you mentioned this idea of trust, that the Republicans on the committee need to trust yourself, and now Chairwoman Weinberg as well. Is trust an issue for this committee? And if so, do you see that being a huge problem? I mean, we've had two votes, both split totally down party lines here. What is the significance of this trust issue as far as you see it?
We've had more than two votes, and we've had votes in both houses of the legislature. Our House voted in the Assembly today unanimously. I think the vote in the Senate was unanimous. A week ago or 10 days ago, both houses voted. I think both votes were unanimous. And so we see broad agreement on the concept of doing an investigation, and then we see a lot of disagreement about the methodology and the way this is implemented. This is the process that has gotten us to the point we're at now. The exact same process, not really any different other than now there are co-chairs, there are senators, but the same process. That process started out as an inquiry as to the operations of the Port Authority because there was a suspicion that the Port Authority wasn't run well, and we saw the Navigant report that called it dysfunctional. That inquiry into the Port Authority led us into the governor's office through emails. And so we're going to follow that same process wherever the facts lead us. There's no predetermined outcome. There's a healthy dose of skepticism, which we should have, but we're looking at answers to a very fundamental question. How somebody in the governor's office thought it was okay to do this, and who gave them that authority?
Senator Weinberg, in light of Chris Christie said, I believe on the 8th, that he thought there was a legitimate traffic study right up until the emails were released. Now, the emails show that there was the police, Port Authority didn't even provide enough police to stop people from blocking the box, which put the whole town in gridlock. You received all the complaints about all the drivers in gridlock and so forth. It clearly was not a study, especially after Foy testified there was no study. What do you think of his claim that from September 9th through January 8th, he had no idea that this wasn't a legitimate study?
Well, I think I've said this publicly. His lack of curiosity, I find curious. But we will find out as we go on and read these documents. I knew very early on that there were no dedicated lanes from Fort Lee over the George Washington Bridge. I knew at the moment Bill Baroni said it. Anybody who comes from our geographic area of Bergen County knows there are no private dedicated lanes. That was the first story that a member of the Port Authority, the second top deputy executive director, came to the Assembly Transportation Committee, not under oath, not as a result of a subpoena, and made up a story. Or he himself was given erroneous information. So, as I said, I find the whole thing curious. Either somebody knew and didn't tell the truth, somebody else lied to the governor, and maybe he had no idea that there were no dedicated lanes from Fort Lee. over the George Washington Bridge.
He said that on December 2nd, right? And that's,
Well, he got a copy of a letter from me on September 19th. So,
did that letter say there were no, that happened?
no, at that point, I didn't know what the story was that they came up with. But I did ask for an inquiry. I explained the results of what went on. So certainly the governor's office did get a copy of a letter from me.
Heather?
Have you got any indication from legal counsel to those who've received subpoenas that they'll be asking for an extension? And are you to subpoena again Nicole Davidson Jr.? It seems like there's been some questions if she's the right Nicole. You notice that?
Well, before we make any determinations on other subpoenas, we're going to wait and see what we get back. As the majority leader pointed out on the floor of the Assembly, the fact that we issued a subpoena to anyone or any organization is really the act of asking a question. There's no supposition. There may be individuals to whom we've issued subpoenas. When we look at that data and the material, we may quickly conclude that we need to focus our efforts elsewhere. We don't know that right now, so it's premature to talk about what we'll do as a next step. In terms of the advice of counsel, I'm not going to discuss, nor is any member going to discuss what the advice of our counsel is on any particular issue, other than to say that he is a well-recognized former U.S. attorney who has got years of experience in handling complicated investigations, and we are following his advice as closely as we can.
Has anyone who received a subpoena asked for an extension?
I'm not aware of any requests, but I will point out to you that when we issued our subpoenas to Mr. Wildstein and Mr. Barone through the Transportation Committee, one of the things that their attorneys did was ask for an extension. So certainly not out of the realm of possibility. I'm not aware of any at this point in time, though.
Did you grant an extension? I can't remember now.
We gave them some extra days. I mean, they had asked, I think in one case, had asked for several weeks, and we had given them a couple extra days.
Two questions. One, first, do you have to reserve all these subpoenas today?
We're going to reserve them. Many of the individuals are represented by counsel. I'm sure that our counsel will be in touch with them, and it might be a very simplified task.
And just in terms of the governor's office, have you had any communication that indicates whether they are going to claim or cite any privileges?
I think it's premature to get there. The governor said twice that he intends to cooperate. We'll take him at his word. We will make decisions if that's not the case at some point in the future, but certainly I don't think it's appropriate for us to speculate that there'll be a roadblock put up when we have no basis to understand that that will happen. Last question? We're good?
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.